Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So for a limited time, the new trial is available on the preview server, Crown of Keldegonn. Now in this trial, you'll initially have to face off against Belindra and Alevorothine. He is essentially a Dracolich which was raised up, and you'll get the whole storyline in the new module. So with that, I've made a document just to roughly go over all the mechanics that you will currently see in the trial. I like to express that many of these values and some of these mechanics might even change throughout its adaptation. This guide should mainly help you on this testing phase and get you through the trial fairly comfortably once you get used to these given mechanics. So here we have my document, and initially we'll start with phase 1, Alevorothine and Belindra. Now the mechanics are fairly straightforward. You'll initially have a claw swipe from the Dracolich. He'll attack the aggravator and deal up to 2.1 million base damage, of course resisted by your statistics. This is an AoE swipe, so make sure you're behind the boss if you're not that active tank. Now this attack will also cause you to take the damage down effect. So if you're hit by this, you will also deal a lot less damage. So it'll make it a lot harder to maintain that aggro as the active tank. Now this claw swipe will also cause you to take a rending bleed stack. Now these stacks will stack up, and the more you have, the more damage you will take over time. Now what's very important is this is percentage based damage. So it's very important that you go and stack as much stats instead of hit points for this trial. You'll get plenty of hit points just through the item level increase. Now the solution to this rending bleed stacks is to switch tank. You're going to need 2 tanks in the group, and the common strategy is to switch the aggro when the active tank gets 2 or more stacks of those bleeds. You can see them here. You can see I currently have 6 of those stacks. That's the blood drop icon. So if you don't switch in time, you'll have too many stacks and you'll just bleed out, especially if the healer's not on top of you, keeping you alive. Additionally, like many dragons, you'll have a tail lash where he'll occasionally just sweep his tail in an arc, knocking away all of his enemies, and that can deal up to 920k base damage. He'll also have a bite attack, so make sure you don't stay in front of him, and this bite attack will have a pretty hefty amount of base damage, and along with that you shall receive a stack of caustic poison where you'll take damage over time. Pretty hefty amount at 310k base damage per tick. You will also receive shock from the bite, which again will also deal the damage over time for 310k base damage per tick. Now you will also get a common lightning breath from the Dracolich, which you'll basically breathe that lightning across you, and if you don't move out of the red area, you'll get pushed back, and each of those hits can deal up to 2 million base damage. Next up, we have a mechanic which is very important for DPS. It's Necrotic Medusa. Everybody will receive one of these red AoEs, and what you want to do is move them apart. Separate them and try not to overlap them. If you overlap them, you'll take excessive amounts of damage, and these areas will leave a purple zone on the ground. And if you enter an overlapped area of this purple zone, it'll drain all of your action points. Now we have Necrotic Bolt. This will come from Belindra, and you will see you will receive a red AoE but with 2 arrows pointing down. This is one of the most important mechanics to get right. Basically, if you get hit by it just alone, it'll deal up to 800k base damage. However, if there's somebody else in that red area when you get hit by the orb, you'll basically kill anybody who's in the red area, including yourself. You can wipe the entire party by not moving with this. And the further you move away from Belindra, who's sitting on the dragon's back, the longer the orb will take to get to you to actually hit you. Next up, we have the Empowered Draconic Aura and those Thayan supports. You will see these Thayan supports will spawn, have that purple line attached to the dragon. What they basically will do is buff up the dragon so that effectiveness of your hits are reduced by 30%. You'll do a lot less damage to the boss. Each of these Thayan supports need to be killed ASAP, and they will have nearly 3 million hit points each. On top of that, while those Thayan supports are up, everybody will take damage from this empowered draconic aura, and basically this will deal for up to 153k base damage per second. So you'll quickly bleed out due to this if you don't kill those supports quick enough and you don't have the backup of your healers. So what we do is we go and have the tank bring the boss away from those Thayan supports, and thus allowing the DPS to easily locate and target the Thayans to kill them as quickly as possible. With all of that said, once you get the Dracolich down to 20% of its hit points, it flies off, and that's that. Then you go to phase 2, where you're going to have to grapple to 4 different islands. It'll look like this. And once you get to that 4th island, you'll get a place here with a barrier. You'll all have to group up at the barrier before you face up against the next boss. Now you have a timer. You have 90 seconds to all group up and enter the boss arena before you go get nuked. So there's no waiting around to expire those skulls that you may have got in the first phase. And yes, they've disabled those altars, so you won't be able to remove the skulls there from that either. So phase 3, we're going to have to face off Valindra and Alevorothine. These are now going to be separate bosses. What you'll want to do is one boss will take the Dracolich and the other boss will take Valindra. Now the strategy to this fight is to deplete the Dracolich's health down by 25%. So you get him down to 75% of his hit points and then he flies off. You will notice that Valindra will be shielded while the Dracolich is in the arena, meaning you're going to have to focus the Dracolich. You get him down to 75% of his hit points, you decrease his health by 25%, he flies off, and then you need to call artifacts and kill Valindra as quickly as possible. You'll only have a 30-second window before the dragon is back, the Dracolich gets healed to full, and Valindra gets shielded again, and you have to repeat the cycle until you get Valindra to 0% of her hit points. Now, the new mechanics you might see here is, again, we have Necrotic Miasma. However, this time your space is limited much more within this floating arena, which you can easily fall off from. Each, again, of those purple areas will last for 2 minutes, so make sure you can coordinate and make sure that there's space still to fight those 2 bosses. Again, that's those red areas. Now you will have also Necrotic Bolt Impact, which is the same as before. You can swap back previous in the video or the document, which will be linked in the description below. Valindra will have shield damage reflection. So basically whenever you hit her while she's shielded, you'll take like 100k base damage. You'll have the Soak Beam damage, which is new now. It's like the hypo. You all have to group up and share the damage. You'll have those 4 horizontal arrows with the vertical one, and you need to group up, and you can see that faint ring there, everybody within it will share the damage, and thus you'll all take less damage. Then you have Necrotic Bindings. Anybody who has the aggro of Valindra will get hit by this, and that's up to like 773k base damage. So make sure the other tag has her attention. Then with Alevorothine, you basically still have the same claw swipe mechanic. However, he does it less often. Therefore, you won't have to switch too much as the tanks for those rending bleeds. So you have a little bit of a breather here as a tank. You have the same shock, caustic poison from that bite attack. I do have to adjust that there. And then you have a new mechanic, which is Force Breath. So it's like the lightning breath weapon. However, the arc is much bigger and it will cause you to get pushed back significantly far. However, you should be able to block it and thus be able to not get moved anywhere, and once you do so, you won't go flying, and you'll take a chunk of damage in that red area as well. So any DPS, you can make sure you just skip out of that or just stay kind of behind the boss, since this will always be directed at the tank. You have the Bite, which is the same as before. You have the Lightning Breath, which is also the same as before, just a much smaller arc there, as you can see, to the new Force Breath. And then you'll have Landing Impact. Now what will happen is when you get the Dracolich down to 75% of its health, it flies off and then you kill Valindra. However, after 20 seconds of beating up Valindra, somebody will get this red AoE. This person will be the one where the Dracolich will come back and land on top of. He'll do a belly flop on them, much like this picture. He'll deal damage within that area, and yeah, make sure you move it away from the group so you're not flattening everybody. And once you manage to kill Valindra, that is phase 3 ended, and we jump straight onto phase 4. What will happen is the Dracolich will get shielded and there'll be a new target, the Phylactery. So the challenge here is to deplete the Phylactery's health and then you'll move on to the next phase. Now the Phylactery has the ability that when you deplete like 33% of its HP, it will teleport to another location at the edge of the platform. Very fortunately, Valindra's necrotic areas, those purple areas, will no longer be created, but the ones that were there will still last that full 2 minutes, so you'll have to wait for them to expire. You will also get lightning. You'll get these red areas which will pop up for 3 seconds and then burst and deal damage if you're in the area, and they will also knock you back. What might happen is they chain together, those lightning effects. You might land in one of them, get knocked into another that bursts and another, and then you'll be dead pretty quick there. You can deal up to 1.5 million base damage per hit. Now you'll also get effect where Alevorothine will roar, and this basically will cause him to get a buff. Now, it doesn't deal a lot of damage, but what you want to watch out for is the knockback ability from it, this pushback. You need to make sure you're all close to the boss or far enough away from the boss that this red area won't affect you. Now, this buff, you'll see it'll look like a green icon there, and it'll basically cause all the knockbacks from Alevorothine to be slightly increased, meaning the next time he roars, you'll get pushed back a little bit further, and this might stack up until you get just pushed off the entire platform. Now you will also get ads which will also start spawning in during this phase as well, and those ads are there to make sure the second tank keeps busy, kites those ads up, and some DPS needs to have some AoE powers to finish them off. Watch out for those bone golems, they can be a bit pesky with their knockdowns and knockbacks. You'll also very annoyingly get these Thayan supports. They'll come back even during the phase while you're killing the Phylactery. You need to prioritize them ASAP because the amount of damage that you take due to the empowered draconic aura while they're up is a significant amount, and healers will just get exhausted. So as soon as these Thayan supports are up, you always need to focus them, and you'll see once the dragon has roared, he'll have one buff, and the Thayan supports will give him another buff there. And this buff will cause him basically to take a lot less damage. And the more Thayan supports that are there, the more damage that he will also deal to everybody. You get to the end of phase 4 once you destroy the Phylactery. Then with phase 5 you'll have one new mechanic, which is this fling. This fling is basically for the tanks. You'll get stunned as the active tank and you'll get pushed back. You'll get thrown back, flinged. And you need to make sure then that you have enough room behind you that when you get flung back, you aren't flung off the platform. This can definitely take some practice, and make sure generally that the boss is in the middle of the arena and you're all good for that. Again, for the rest of the phase, it'll just consist of those same mechanics: the bite, the claw swipe, Thayan supports, lightning ground, adds, roar, landing impact, because he will disappear occasionally, fly off and land back down on somebody. Same with the force breaths, the lightning breath and the fling. And you'll complete this by finally just killing the Dracolich. And the trial will be over, and GG, you'll win. So again, hopefully this has been somewhat helped you guys with this new trial. Just those of you who want to check it out. Again, it is limited time. You only have until Monday to see how this trial is and give it your best shot. They might very well release it again for a limited time before it actually goes live, but we'll see how this testing period goes. They just kind of want to maintain the hype of this trial by not allowing us to continually grind it and practice it throughout the entire period before it actually launches. So I guess they're somewhat limiting us to that. I don't see it as such a bad thing. I still managed to get my testing done and get this document out to you guys. So it should be somewhat helpful and be able to prepare you guys what to expect when you jump in with a group. So again, if it presented this well, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing. See you guys around. Goodbye for now.